So coming back over here to the slides, Lake Sandoval, of course, right here, that is a caiman, relative of the alligator. Another close-up view of just a beautiful landscape. But what makes Lake Sandoval also unique, and then after this slide, I'll turn the lights back on, these are the giant river otters. I'm sorry I'm not being a good geographer. I can't give you scale. In a perfect world, I would have had a student crawl out there on the log and sit there so you could see scale. But they are very shy creatures. And they are on the endangered species list. And out of the list of the endangered species, this one is flagged as in the most danger of all. People who count these animals, they believe there's only about 350 left in the world, with the bulk of them being located in southern Peru, with quite a few of them in Lake Sandoval. People from around the world fly to this particular place, go to this lake just to see these unbelievable creatures. Of course, river otters are cute animals. These are giant river otters, and they are very, very large. Probably to kind of give you some sense of scale, they're about the size of a German Shepherd. They're not tiny. And you know, they live in family groups. When the Spanish first came here, to give you an idea how abundant they were, when the Spanish first came to this area, they called them the river fox. There were so many, they were so abundant. They're very aggressive creatures. They eat a lot of fish. So, you know, with so many of them and eating a lot of the fish, they were a nuisance to the Spanish because they were competition for food sources. Of course, the Spanish killed quite a few of them, but as this area has become more populated, their environment is being threatened and we're losing them. So they're really neat animals that we got to see. Other elements of the tropics. Turn the lights back on. Of course, everything's big in the tropics. I'm standing in front of a kapok tree. This is me. Here I can give you scale. I'm 5'2", and there I am. I look like a little ant compared to this massive tree. These roots right here are called buttresses. In the tropics, where you have a lot of rain, trees can fall over very easily, and then these type of root systems help to stabilize the trees in the tropics. You have a lot of interesting, besides the giant river otters, a lot of interesting things that live in the tropics, and these are just a couple of slides. This up above is the pink-toed tarantula. Poisonous. You don't want to play with these, because I say that in Texas, you know, when I was little, we used to play with tarantulas. You don't want to play with this one. Very poisonous. Kind of hard to see. Let me turn the lights off again. They have a lot of ants in the tropics. This one gave you scale, but it was very dangerous. This is called a Congo bullet ant. It's named a bullet ant because for people who have been shot by a bullet, they say to be bit by one feels the same way. Their sting is powerful, but they're very, very large. This is an adult hand next to it. So these ants can be, I guess, up to almost an inch. They're big. And they're so large you can actually see what they can bite with, and they bite and they like to hang on. Hence, their bite hurts. And of course, the blue macaw and beautiful sunsets. Being in the southern hemisphere, when the sun went down, being so far away from an urban population, it gave great views of the Southern Cross and other beautiful things of the night sky. From Puerto Maldonado, we boarded our planes again and we headed to Cusco. This particular shot, and again, Terry, I apologize, I have to turn the lights on, turn the lights off. I want you to see something. This is the Amazon running into the Andes Mountains. I don't know if you can fully appreciate, with the tropics running into the Andes, and see the snow back there, those are glaciers. Very few places in the world, the tropics meet up with glaciers. Close-up view, that is the exact same mountain chain that you're looking at in the distance. So we've crossed over into the foothills of the Andes, and these little pockets in through here, you can see the U-shaped valleys carved out by glaciers, but these are all glaciers up and through here. This beautiful lake here is a lake that is formed from glacial melt. And again, Peru, a place of great diversity. Landing in Cusco, again, a little bit of the old with the new. You go there, of course, to see the Incan ruins. But as Coca-Cola is everywhere, and McDonald's. And of course, McDonald's welcomes you to Cusco. Of course, I already mentioned that Cusco was the capital of the Incan Empire. And it is an area, of course, tourism helps, but even if you were to remove tourism, it is a group of people that work very, very hard to maintain their traditional way of life. Most restaurants you go into, of course, you're catering to the tourist industry, but most restaurants you go into will always have a band playing. Peruvians love their festivals, they love their music, and they love to have a good time. And so you have a very typical Peruvian band with the flute, the pan flute, guitars and drums. And we were given a show of the dances. We happened to be in Cusco during the National Dance-Off. Different indigenous groups from all over Peru came in to compete, and this is a weekend-long festival. Every village has their dance, and their dance represents their culture. So here these men and women are doing one of their traditional dances, dressed in traditional costume. And again, the part of the dance that they were doing was to prove manhood. As a rite of passage, there are dances that are performed to prove your womanhood as well as to prove your manhood, and this is one particular dance. Of course, the ladies are back here. They backed off, and they were dancing right before getting ready. They backed off, and then the men would take whips, and then they would pop each other with their whips, and you had to stand there not to show any type of pain. Again, that's how part of that rite of passage. I'm sure somewhere along the way this was done, but they've turned it into a dance, and if you go there, you might see this particular dance that is performed. This was our tour guide who was handed the whip, he is Peruvian and Inca, had a lot of Inca heritage. And he was familiar with the dance and had quite a good time slapping this other guy in the leg, as you can see. Just some street scenes of the people. Two ladies, just dressed. People down here still dress very traditionally. I don't know where they were going. I don't know where they'd come from. I don't know them, but I just thought, this was very typical of the type of scenes we saw in Cusco. Well, yeah, I know. Yeah. They did not walk in there. I did wait to see. I said, they better not be going in there. No, they were just walking down the street, and of course, yeah, tourism everywhere. You can go bungee jumping. This next slide is very typical, again, of the architecture. Peru is prone to earthquakes. They had an earthquake in, let's see, let me get my notes out here. In 1650, a massive earthquake hit Cusco, and it knocked down all the Spanish buildings, but left behind the Incan buildings. Of course, the Spanish were coming in. They tore down quite a bit of the Incan. Again, Cusco was a huge Incan city. They tore down a portion of it, and then, of course, they built Spanish buildings next to it, or Spanish buildings tore something completely down, but there were a lot of Incan buildings still left behind. This earthquake destroyed every Spanish building that was in existence, but it left behind the Incan ruins. They got smart. They kept what was there, and they built on top of it and used more traditional Incan building techniques. So when you go to Cusco, you see this. These are the ancient walls of the Incan city and the Incan houses with the Spanish architecture on top, a little bit of the Moorish influence of the balconies, and then, of course, colonial architecture, wrought iron. Again, very typical that you see in Peru. And again, more street shots of the people. This blend of traditional, woman carrying her package in the traditional way with her hat. The street scene, it was early morning. People are setting up for the day. You see a woman over here, again, dressed somewhat in her traditional fashion, carrying her child in a traditional way. I don't see women in the United States carrying their babies much like this. We put them in strollers. A man setting up here, getting ready to cook something for people passing by. Over here selling citrus products. Chinchero Market, again, just the markets that are all around. Chinchero Market, one of the more famous ones. It's a market that caters to the locals as well as to the tourist. Again, people dressed, they're not dressing up for the tourists. This is how they dress, unlike some other touristy areas. Again, a local boy, herding, I guess a cowboy.
Dr. Hoffman, is it cold? I mean, it's very sunny, obviously, but you see everybody with jackets and whatnot.
Yeah.
So
Oh, yeah, I failed to mention Cusco's at 10,800 feet elevation to start with,
chilly.
and it's very cold. We were there in June, which is their winter. The nighttime, we would get down in the 30s and 40s, and during the day, it would warm up to the 70s, but it did get cold. And the warm period only lasted for about an hour or two, and then it quickly dropped again. But even in the summertime, these areas stay relatively cool. A neat little scene here. Again, we don't see this happening very much. We have cows. You know, in the United States, if you see cows like this, you think, oh my God, my cows got out and they're running in the pasture. No, this is intentional. This is the type of farming that you see in less developed countries. We have our various fields that are here. Of course, we're going into the winter time, so harvesting is over with. This is a corn field, and instead, you know, like right now, the fields in this area have been harvested. Tractors come in and plow it up, and they get the dirt ready for the next crop to come in. They don't do that here. They don't waste anything. What they do, they have the fodder that is left behind, the cattle come in, and then they eat it. So they have something to eat, and then at the same time, what goes in has to come out? Fertilizer. Smart. Smart. Like I said, harvest time had already happened. Corn up here, being up there to dry out. No wasted space.